All right, guys. So I've got a very interesting guy. His name is Hogne. And, I'm on a roll here, doing these great interviews, educating people about it, telling people about, what is going on with blockchain technology. Obviously, we've had a bit of a topsy-turvy year this year. 2018 has been the year, I would say, of regulation, making sure which projects are really putting their neck on the line, something that I stand for. This is why my popularity is growing quite fast on LinkedIn. And one of the things I do is I interview great projects like cloud computing, like what iFriend are doing in this space. And I think everyone should take a notice exactly why these guys are going to revolutionize the future in cloud computing called iFriend. It's a privilege to get Hogne on board, to tell us his ideas, his story around iFriend, what is going on with his ICO in cloud computing, and understand the fundamentals of it. First things first, this is just purely an educational interview. As you know, this is not financial advice. I have got a huge following, and all I do is I try to spread good education about these interviews, and do not take this sort of investment advice, but see it as a light to understand what projects they do. And that is why my name is spreading quite fast. Hogne, it's a privilege to get you into this interview. Let's fire away. Obviously, cloud computing is starting to evolve. I like the technology around decentralization. I like the fact that you're giving power back to the customers, and privacy obviously is another big thing. And my audience, they take a look at this, they see what is going on in the world, and I think those are some of the fundamental issues that we're going to talk about. So Hogne, welcome to the interview.
Thank you so much.
So Hogne, there's cloud computing is changing. We've had a centralized server, where people obviously have used it, they've tested it, businesses are using it. It's so easy to transfer files. It's so easy to store it onto a server. Obviously these are the rituals of technology, and, having power back is something that's quite important to the people. Tell us a little bit about yourself first, and why did you get into this area of blockchain, and why did you start this project called iFriend?
Yes, so my name is Hogne Titlestad. That's how it's pronounced in my native tongue. I have a background as a programmer since 2001. Prior to that, I was into philosophy, art, those type of things. Was a bit disillusioned already back then at the turn of the century on computers in general.
Right.
Because I felt that computers were kind of the business side of computers were winning through. And when I grew up, there were so many different systems available. Every one of them had an identity, and kind of the platform with the less or least identity of all of them won through. And if you were going into higher education, then of course that was the platform, the Microsoft platform that everybody was going to be using. So I was a bit disillusioned by that, and that's why I went into arts and philosophy. But when I had to get into
cloud computing, so what was it that you kind of built this project, and how this sort of project started to born, sort of thing?
Well, things are coming together, and so what was happening, kind of in the mid 90s, when the internet really started to take hold, was that these internet services came about, and for a long time, with advancements, you finally got Napster, you got LimeWire, you got BitTorrent, and that was kind of the first technologies that went into decentralization. People wanted to have a technology that was not surveillance.
Right.
Of course, when we got the internet, people knew about phone surveillancing and so on, and they were using their ISDNs and old internets. And these new technologies were anonymous. And so you were getting anonymous technologies, and finally you got cloud platforms online, and kind of it was obvious that these two types of technologies should mix and give you anonymous experience online where you have your privacy, you own your own data, and you only share who you are and your private information when you choose to do so.
And that's how it kind of became sort of a more of a very serious thing that also sort of spilled over into businesses, especially large businesses, in terms of how the way data is being handled on these servers, and who has access to this data through cloud computing is something that's given power back to the customer. Would you agree, sort of thing?
Oh yeah, and that's kind of why I started out with talking about how computers were back in the old days. You know, it started with hacker nerds, you know, working with these obscure computers, and people were very much part of the whole computer phenomenon, getting into personal computing. It started with a kind of grassroots movement, and then it became a mainstay. Yeah. And that's where we are now. I mean, we see hackathons, we see maker spaces, people are getting involved, and you have open source projects, which are kind of virtual hacker spaces or virtual maker spaces where people come together from all over the world, creating fantastic projects.
So let's talk about your fantastic project, which is, you know, iFriend, and what you're doing in cloud computing. You know, tell us a little bit about your project, because we're going to break down the fundamentals of what your project is, so then my audience can understand how you're trying to tackle this area in blockchain technology. Obviously, blockchain is something I'm very much involved in, and I feel like it is the future of tech. So how is it going to change in this area? And let's educate people about this.
Well, so the point is that today, most people come over or across Office 365 if they're in a business, or if they're just a user, it's the Google Docs and all that stuff. And, you know, we know there's eavesdropping, people are being profiled, and we live in a kind of tumultuous world at the moment, and nobody's really safe if they share all their data in these big tech company silos, right? So we need an alternative. And Friend does that and then some. Blockchain technology allows us to create a ledger where we can do transactions, where we can form relationships together, and where we can store the identity of our files and resources. So it has a huge potential for allowing us to place our data on the internet in an encrypted form, and then find that data back again with these blockchain technologies. And so what the Friend project is doing is that it's combining cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and decentralized technologies and know-how to create an alternative to the Google Cloud, to the Azure Cloud, with an entire ecosystem inside that allows you to use applications, develop and distribute applications, and do all of that with no middlemen, and without having to sign an end-user license agreement up front. It's essentially just the internet now has functionality, and you choose to use it.
What problem is with Google Cloud now? You know, obviously there's the Google storage. You can storage files. You know, you can. It's great to send files back and forth. I've used it many times, and there's other ones called like WeTransfer, which is kind of a decentralized file peer-to-peer filing system where you can send videos and pictures. Obviously, in cloud terms, you know, what is the issue with Google, and how are you guys trying to solve the problem with Friend ICO?
Well, end user license agreements, you know, you get a notification, we have updated our terms of service and so on. Nobody ever reads that stuff. But, you know, because of how the business models are, they just can't stop. And that's with a lot of these business models, also selling your information. You going to a restaurant somewhere, pulling your card. Next time you go online, there is an advertisement for that restaurant because you know, use your Visa card. All that is quite annoying, and the scale is become completely impossible to have an overview over who has your data, where is the data going. We need to break through that, and we see that the trust value for the different big tech companies are going down. People want an alternative. They want something that's not owned by somebody who's going to act mischievously and share your data with somebody you don't know. And that's exactly what we're solving with the Friend project.
I totally agree with you. I think advertising and some of these big companies such as Google, I've done a lot of research in this area, and the followers, the thousands of followers that follow me will probably agree privacy is probably the #1 thing right now. and these guys are taking big cuts, you know, from the content that you're watching or the systems that you're using, and obviously making huge returns. Would you kind of agree that this is unfair for the customer?
Oh, it's absolutely awful. But you have to consider this, that if the United States government or any other large country would change their laws to make it illegal to sell your information, Silicon Valley would have a huge problem and big tech could possibly collapse. And that's an economy the size of Germany. And so they just can't stop. And so the only way we can get out of this thing is to introduce an alternative and then iteratively move to other technologies. That's the only way. And that's why we built our project from the start, not to monetize using people's data, but instead use a token, which built in at the foundation of this project will allow us to build an ecosystem that's not reliant on being mischievous to people's rights to privacy.
I totally agree with you 100%. I think this is a very big issue. I think customers want to see a fair return in value and also be in control of their own data. They don't want centralized servers to use that. What problems are you guys trying to solve then, is my next question. You know, what is the problem Friend ICO is trying to solve, you know, in what you're doing in blockchain technology? This is about blockchain. So let's talk about what blockchain is doing with your ICO, and what problem are you trying to solve?
So what we're trying to solve is, first of all, as we, as developers have understood from the beginning of the introductions, but especially with Ethereum, is that cryptocurrencies and blockchain give open source projects a business plan, a way of monetizing, and a way of kind of kickstarting their entire technology into the hands of users without having to go to a commercial partner or to sell to resellers. You can actually ignite the entire marketplace together with your technology. That's very powerful. And also we see that a lot of projects are doing an app or doing a database or doing a different technology. The Friend project actually combines all these existing projects in a compelling user experience, which is a direct competition to the Chrome OS, which comes on all these Chromebooks, but with an uncompromising access in the browser tab. So there's nothing to install. Whatever you're using, as long as it has a browser, you can still access your Friend Chromebook anywhere you are. So it gives developers and users all the tools they need to be productive, create, collaborate, communicate, and distribute access to each other's services and applications based on all the technologies that are happening all over the blockchain space to create the self-sufficient ecosystem.
So talking about, you know, what Friend is doing in blockchain technology, it's becoming quite holistic in the sense that, you know, let's break down the steps. You can sort of save files, you can send files, you can put your personal information there. You know, obviously privacy is also a very big issue and so forth. You know, break down the steps that your project is doing in this area to be reckoned with some of the companies that are probably already doing it, but how you're doing it sort of differently in terms of a decentralized manner sort of thing.
Yeah, so of course, Google Cloud and all these systems, they are using centralized server networks, but they're definitely using clustering, and they're definitely using technologies that could be decentralized if they had the incentive to do so. So we have built a clustering engine over the last year, right, doing research on this, and we've seen that the clustering engine that allows for massive scaling, let's say taking on a few million users into a network, is the gateway to decentralization for a system like ours. And so by using blockchain, we get the ledger and transactions and the relationship of the user with the network. So that one can be used as a deposit of organizing all the decentralized resources, for example, using IPFS or storage for files, do a client-side encryption on those so that you can safely store them out there with in a trustless manner, and then using the blockchain, retrieve them and decrypt them on your client device. So they're never available to anybody but you when you're using Friend. Also, we're partnering with, one of our partners is FluenceDB, which has a decentralized database, which allows you to essentially both use Friend in a decentralized manner with structured data, but also allows you as a developer to launch and deploy an entire application without having a partnership with IBM or AWS or something like that. So by logging in with your Friend account, you're unlocking all the resources that are scattered throughout the internet, and then you're decrypting them on your device in total privacy. And blockchain is essential to keep order of all those things laying around decentralized on the internet.
You know, I like the idea. I like the fact that this is something where you're kind of giving power back to the people, it seems. And I think, blockchain technology is all about, I think, power to the people. Everything from, storing information on a distributed ledger, making sure it's not tampered with. It can spill over to cloud computing as well, where, customers and businesses even, I'm sure there's a lot of data hacking. There's a lot of data breaching happening with different businesses. Information that shouldn't be spilled is a leakage. It is a problem. I think blockchain technology is probably the most secure, if not going to be a revolutionizing technology where everything is going to change. So I like the idea that, there is space in cloud computing in blockchain technology. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. And also it's a rapidly developing technology. It's being utilized everywhere at the moment. And us also working in the small business sector in what you call micro business market all over the world, we see that even small companies and mom and pop shops are talking about blockchain these days because it offers them so many compelling opportunities, signing documents, proving agreements. It just has to be made easier to use. And so creating a platform that kind of transparently integrates with the blockchain ecosystems out there, I think we can deliver that to normal people without them having to download anything or learn a new technology. Essentially, we're giving them the user interfaces to take advantage of this great potential.
I totally agree. So look, I want to get into this now. I'm a pretty lively guy on LinkedIn. A lot of people know me. My popularity is starting to grow, especially in this area. I'm sure if you look at me on LinkedIn, I'll probably get 100 likes and many, many views. And I'm proud of that because it's something I like. I like, this technology, and I'm very passionate about it. So with Friend now, what is going on with privacy? Obviously, this is a huge issue. People are starting to complain. We had the GDPR problems and obviously regulations starting to come in, especially from the UK, where customers' privacy should be secure. And I'm sure a lot of my audience will probably they'll agree with exactly what I'm trying to say. And I'm sure there'll be a few comments flying around as well in this interview. What is Friend doing in terms of privacy, and sort of how are you trying to protect the customer for them to use your platform in cloud computing?
We're trying to use encryption on everything possible. So, encryption is what hides and disguises your information online. So when you're turning off your computer and you're leaving, all the stuff that's left online on servers throughout the internet today is left open, perhaps protected by a password, but accessible to private companies, contractors, large corporations.
Oh, don't tell me about passwords. Passwords are unbelievable. And I think that's a huge issue, especially the number of customers and people moaning to me about how many times they have to change their password. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's exactly where we're working really hard to make sure that you have an easy single sign-on into the entire platform. And we're working on ways for you to have a backup plan if you lose your password. And but the main point is that you unlock your cloud computer, which is your Friend user account, with your credentials, which unlocks everything you need. And nobody else in the world has access. We don't have access. Other users can't see it. Contractors are not involved. This is a total user-owned idea an idea of giving something that is accessible on the internet, just like the internet itself is accessible, but with a really strong emphasis that nobody else can own your data. You are totally secure. You have total control over your own privacy. That is our focus and goal with the Friend project.
And I think that's a brilliant idea. I think privacy, you kind of just hit it there on the nail, that, you know, it's there for the customer to obviously, you know, protect themselves from anyone else sort of, you know, entering or breaching their information. Why privacy for you? You know, why are you, this is the fundamental issue here. Why privacy for the Friend project? What are you guys trying to do?
Without inspiring me to go into a philosophical discussion.
Yeah, it would be all day otherwise,
which I'm very inspired to do. But privacy is, you know, we started with computers that were offline. Privacy was not a problem. We got a behavior of how to use systems, and suddenly now we're online, and the game has changed. We're trying to change the game back again so that your local files, even if you're online, is local. You get like a feeling that it's my private space. But it's not only that. I mean, you know, in a general perspective, privacy is not only about being a secret person. It's not only about being anonymous. It's also to reduce the buzz of information that you can obtain about others. There are a lot of things, you know, to live together. We need to have a situation where our processes are private and our work is public. Today, more and more, our processes are public, which means people will judge you on what you're about to say instead of what you have decided to say. And so the focus on privacy is very important to allow the best of you to come out and for you to feel safe when you're making up your mind.
I'm disappointed with Google because, you know, if you go and just type in your name on the search bar, everybody can see your address. You know, this is a big issue for customers and people who are on the internet. You know, they can see your pictures and there's no sort of privacy there. And I think this sort of leakage needs to stop, in the sense that people don't want their information to be spread all over the internet, and for every single URL address to pick up something about you. So would you think that's a big issue?
Yeah, it's a big issue. And it's also a bit about how you're working today with the web. You have perhaps 60 tabs open, and so you're splishing and splashing and sploshing your content all over the place with copy paste. And so because you're going between all these tabs, it becomes chaotic. And that's why Friend organizes everything in one tab so that you have everything inside the environment where you have to use your credentials to log in, so that you kind of get an overview over everything you're doing in a privacy oriented manner.
Let's talk about, you know, privacy, a very big issue. We could be here all day talking about it, but it's good that Friend are implementing that into their service, which I think is very important. So to my audience, do take a note of that, because obviously privacy is going to be one big issue. I feel that's going to be when we enter 2019 and so forth. One of the questions I want to ask you is what common issues is cloud computing going to face in the future? We never talk about, you know, what we talk about the present, but what is Friend going to do in terms of how this evolution is going to change, and what sort of problems is cloud computing going to face?
I think cloud computing pretty quickly will turn into Earth computing.
Sorry?
And Earth computing in terms of the
planet.
That one. in terms of the planet. So, you know, because essentially what we're seeing here is that Earth is forming a nervous system. Just like you see from space, you can see cities in the night from space. Looks like these spore-like organic shapes. You know, sometimes we have to zoom out and think about what humanity is doing instead of what we are doing. And essentially, humankind is building a nervous system around the planet. And kids growing up will interact with this. It will be their school, their banking system, their society. And one of the biggest problems there is, do you want a private company to own the nervous system of the planet? Of course you won't. that, that is essentially going to make those owners into gods, and we can't have that. And so it's very
you're saying
important.
sorry to interrupt. You're saying there's a common problem in the future in terms of how our younger generation is gonna use this technology. And do you think now this is gonna be a thing where people are gonna sort of now change in terms of how this technology is changing, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, the AR paradigm is coming quickly. All the big tech giants are working on transparent AI equipment, essentially sunglasses, and at one point lenses. We all know that's coming. And so the digital, or what they call the cyber physical, is being mixed with our reality. And this entire thing is going to be powered by this grid, this nervous system of computers that is around the planet. And if this stuff is owned by corporations, they're going to be able to change how you're thinking, nudge you in the direction they want, total mind control. And by making sure that developers and techies and normal people all over the planet has a say in how this nervous system is being built, we can prevent that. We can democratize the system so that we can have a free mind once these technologies are totally immersive and totally penetrating into your psychology, will be everywhere.
Right. And in terms of Friend and what you guys are doing in cloud computing, what problems do you oversee now in the next, say, few months to a year? And what common issues? Because I want to talk about fundamentals here rather than being sort of a technical, sort of savvy sort of interview, because a lot of people don't understand some technical words. So they're trying to understand the ease of it. And I think my audience will love to hear, what is it that, the problems that you think are going to face with, sort of thing?
Well, the internet is breaking down. We're already seeing a Chinese, European, and American internet emerging. And that's going to go much further than that. Each state is essentially going to have their own internet. And that means that you won't be able to use the internet normally when you're moving about. You'll have to log into your national domain, for example. And what we see with a decentralized friend network is a way to create an internet inside of the internet that breaks through all those boundaries. Again, we are trying to push back on these processes that governments are trying to enforce to in their panic mode, try to get control over the world. And we're trying to make sure that the world stays democratic. So one of our biggest problems going forward is regulation and making sure that we can legally use the internet freely all over the world.
I think that's quite a good point you made there. And it's a very, very good point, because I see when I was in China, they had their own internet system. WeChat was their own social media group. And I can see that happening because identities don't want to be clashed, it seems. And I think the West is so different to the East. And the more the technical savvy people understand that, the better it is, because cultures and identities and ethnicities are very different. Would you say that in some sense?
Oh, for sure. I mean, most people come from a starting point where they are very different. Culturally and language-wise, we're very different. Of course, at a certain point,
True.
We become very much the same. We're all human beings. We once we get beyond our nitty-gritties in our neighborhoods and start going on to a more universal level, we're much more the same than we're different. Even in China, people have a need for privacy. Even in China, Huawei is working on allowing you to do storage at home with their matebooks. And also, a lot of Chinese people are looking for an alternative to WeChat. The point is, in China, they don't want to use American technologies.
No, they don't.
They don't want to be dependent on them. And at the moment, WeChat is one of the best things they've got at the moment. They want something alternative to WeChat. And of course, that's going to come. I think the most important thing is that we put so much functionality into the internet itself that you can build on top of that and then get like a least common denominator for everybody, as long as you have a web browser.
I think that's what the internet has done. It's bring that connectivity together. Maybe culturally, companies and businesses haven't intertwined that much. And obviously, you know, there's also that trade issue that's going on as well. But in terms of a holistic, collective, a social manner, I think we've all sort of come well together to also understand each other and our differences. I want to know now, in terms of Friend and what your ICO is doing, is what is in store for the next, say, 6 months, and what are you guys are up to in terms of really revolutionizing this technology?
So we're really going deep into development of decentralized technology, making sure we can take the plunge. Once we've got the right funding level, we will be hiring a lot of people. And these people need a guiding light to how to start, how to get into things. A lot of the people we will hire will not have knowledge about network computing. They will be great developers, but they won't have the experience. So we're making sure that we can aggregate enough information between the different people in our tech team so that we can quickly get people into production and start rolling out the technology that we have planned to build. So a lot of this time that has passed already has been used to prepare, test, and prototype, which is essential so that we can keep the deadlines set in our roadmap. That's pretty much what's going to happen. Also, people will see our open source project blossoming. They will see a lot more faces on GitHub. There was already, you'll see that the last month, our commits on GitHub went through the roof compared to where it was before. And you're going to start seeing much more partnerships with other open source projects, getting them into the ecosystem.
I hope we can do a follow-up and hear all about that as well, and share that hopefully to my thousands of followers, sort of thing. So it would be great to hear that. What I want to understand is, you mentioned about the community. You know, let's just go back to the basics, just so that my audience sort of understand, because I always feel for my audience as well, you know, in terms of this technical revolution that's happening, and then the average person on the street that's trying to pick up a book and understand it. What is it that you guys are going to do in cloud computing? And let's just recap, what is it you are going to do to take it forward, sort of thing?
We're essentially going to give people what they use online in terms of collaboration, document editing and sharing, and communication in an open platform that anyone can use without agreeing to any licensing terms. We're just going to totally free that up and give it to everybody, Robin Hood style. Robin Hood style. And then we're going to make sure that everybody can use that and start their business and start creating the next layer. Now that we've done computing, we've done operating systems, we've done all this basic technology, now let's get on to the next thing. That's what's going to really be interesting.
It's like blockchain 3.0, which I'm sure is going to be the next step. So hopefully Friend can follow that path as well, in terms of how fast technology and the transactions are going to change this ecosystem. It's a privilege to interview you, Hogne. It's good to hear your views about Friend, about what you guys are doing. You know, I do like the idea that you're trying to really tackle a problem, especially in privacy. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of developments occurring. Are you going to be in the community to share this?
Oh, I'm already talking to everybody who comes in, and I'm essentially a digital citizen. So I'm always online, and I love to meet new people. So that goes without saying.
I can't wait to put your interview out. Guys, check out what Friend is doing. It's a important task, I say, and I would say it's an important piece of technology that obviously is going to change the way we use blockchain technology. This is just a sort of a very easy breakdown story of what Friend is doing as an ICO, to tell you guys what these guys are up to. So, Hogne, it's a privilege to interview you. Good to hear your views. Hopefully we can do a follow-up in a few weeks' time.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Check it out. Great to hear your views, and see you at the next one. Peace. Thanks very much, Hogne. Thank you.
All right.